right, now that we got all that settled, just a heads up, Facebook, you guys, StreamYard's being weird. I don't know what's going on. I haven't. It's new to me. So anyway, as you know, my little ADHD butt always has notes. Today I have quite a few because there's some stuff we need to go over. We're going to make, I am going to make some frenemies today. I'm really good at this, you guys. I'm really good at making frenemies. Oh, you have no idea how good I am at this. All right, so anti-nutrients are, they're controversial. Some people say you should eat them. Some people say you shouldn't. Some people are like completely anti-nutrient. Here's the problem. Every plant on the planet has anti-nutrients. They just do. Right? Hi, Mandy. Feel free to pipe in because I know this is something you've delved into at some point. So, if you don't know me, if you are new here, my name is Bonnie Wilderson-Heiss. I have been a holistic nutritionist and certified personal trainer since 2003. I'm where you come when you want real deal. You don't come to me because you want the ooey gooey gushy feeling. You come to me because you are prepared and ready to hear real talk, real truth. I'm on a mission. I want to help at least 1 million women reduce their inflammation, decrease sensitivities, stop stressing over food. Bottom line, stop stressing over food, just eat healthy, well-balanced diet without having to think too much about it. It really isn't that difficult. Society and marketing make it seem like it is. Once you figure out your body, you're golden. So, you want to do that? You want the real deal? This is where you come. All right, so let's talk anti-nutrients. Now, the ones that we're going to talk about today, these are not all of them. Typically, when you see blog posts, you see studies, things like that, there are only a few that are pulled into play. There are anti-nutrients all over the world. Herbal medicine is filled with them. Why do we have them? Why do they even exist? Well, many of you, if you follow me at any length of time, you know I believe in plant-based eating, right? A plant-based diet. Well, the components that we find in plants and the reason herbal medicine and plant-based dieting or food is medicine, Dr. Mark Hyman, oof, that name. I used to work with a guy named Mark Harmon. So every time I say Dr. Mark Hyman, I want to say Harmon. It kills me every time. Anyway, Dr. Mark Hyman has a phrase that he's put out for many, many, many years. Food is medicine. Now, he is a licensed medical practitioner. He has studied nutrition his entire life. He is one of my favorite people to listen to on a podcast because what he teaches is what I believe. What we eat is our foundation. Our nutrition, our diet is our foundation. When we put into our bodies what it needs, using variety and moderation, so you're not eating the same thing every single meal, you're not eating the same thing every single day. Variety truly is the spice of life. Our brains are very happy when we eat a wide variety. It's a signal to our brain that we're living in abundance. We're living in an area of abundance. So if we need certain nutrients to help fuel our immune system, produce energy, thrive versus just surviving, our brain is now tricked into believing that it's at our disposal. All it has to do is send us a signal and we'll go get it. Okay? So I want you to keep two things in mind while we're talking today. Variety and moderation. Now, back to why plants and herbal medicine are a thing and how do we know that if we need this, then we go get that. Part of it is a primal instinct, okay? And for a lot of us, Life in general, what we've been taught about diet and nutrition growing up, has instilled this blueprint into our subconscious. And that blueprint is inaccurate. Now, we can relearn and we can get back to some primal instincts that are actually much more helpful to us, but it takes time, it takes practice, and it takes strategy. The way that we know that these things actually work, that this is a thing, is if you delve into traditional medicine, okay, ancient medicine, traditional healing protocols, things from Native Americans, from the traditional Chinese medicine, the Asian countries, as well as Ayurvedic and South American healing medicine, men and women. A lot of these look at how the plants themselves act. What are their defense mechanisms? How do they thrive when Mother Nature starts acting up, getting all PMSy and, emotional and overly dramatic? How do they act? What do they do? How do they protect themselves? How do they thrive in life? And what do all their colors mean? Ancient healing medicine men and women figured these things out. They figured out that if they ate a certain way, if they included certain things in their diet, that those things actually helped them as well. Anti-nutrients are part of their defense mechanism. Okay? So a plant has several defense mechanisms. One of them is poisoning. Another is that really bitter flavor. Now, there are bitter foods out there, and the bitter foods are a lot of times the healthy bitter foods, because there's bitter poison and there's bitter healthy, right? The bitter healthy foods are actually very dense and packed full of nutrients that we need. Superfoods. Bitter cherries, things like that. Let me see, cranberries. Cranberries can be very bitter. The darker, the richer the color, we talked about this before, where color and that rainbow is just a big thing for our brains. It sees the color, it sees the vibrancy, it sees the deep depth of color. An eggplant, that deep, rich color on the outside, hides the fact that inside it's white. Why? It tells our primal instincts that this is a food that is packed full of nutrients. The deeper, the richer, the more vibrant the green in our leafy greens and our cruciferous foods, cauliflower included, it's wrapped in green leaves, the more dense the nutrients inside. So when you're looking at anti-nutrients, it's the plant's way of making sure that the animals that consume it do not overdo it. I did not mean to rhyme that. That's gonna have to go somewhere. That's what it's for, is to make sure that that plant can survive and thrive in nature. Just like we have our primal instincts for thriving and surviving in nature, that's what our herbal medicine, our plants for food, that's what they have the capability to do too. Where'd you think we learned it? All right, so now you have this defense mechanism, but what are they? So now usually when I present this, I present 4 different components. We talk about gluten, we talk about the phytates, the lectins, as well as the oxalates, right? Because those are the top 4 most common seen. Now, I put in lectins. Lectins they're actually the more common of the anti-nutrients discussed online in videos. I don't know why. Really, when you look at it, I mean, these are my notes. It's just as bad as everything else. I don't really know. I've never been able to figure it out. It's quite possibly because lectins reduce the production of mucus production within your body. And Mucus is responsible for lining all of our internal epithelial cells, right? Including our digestion. Now with lectin, it reduces mucus, so it actually slows things down because you don't have all that lubrication, right? Where does it come from? Beans, grains, seeds, and nuts. Those four are going to pop up a lot. Now, beans, grains, seeds, and nuts are packed full of nutrients, right? If we give up one, we can eat the other three. And technically, we could only eat one category and still receive a boatload of vitamins and minerals. There's a lot of nutritional value within those foods. To give you an example, beans, grains, seeds, and nuts, those four are found within, or not found within, contain multiple anti-nutrients. They contain phytates, lectins, oxalates, let me see what else, and actually some tannins. Those are going to be found more within your legumes, some of your fruits, mostly the ones that you can, make wine out of. Can you remove tannins in wine? Yes, there is actually wine out there where the tannins have either been reduced or have been removed. Now, if you do not eat, oh my gosh, if you don't drink wine very often, it's not going to impact you, right? It's the same thing with all of this. It's the tannins in it will or should not produce much of a response. All right, so let's start at the top of my list and we'll go down. We'll talk about each one of these. I have 7 anti-nutrients on my list. There are more out there. These are the 7 that really make up the bulk of our American diet. And I'm not talking about the standard American diet. I am talking about a plant-based, well-balanced diet. Okay? How these actually became a popular thing and such a controversial subject came with paleo, keto, Atkins, the low carb diets. So effectively, if you're on a low carb diet, your goal is to eat 24 grams of carbohydrates or less, including fruits and vegetables, you guys, not just grains. Okay, there are diets where you're going to eat low grain, right? Low gluten, things like that. What I'm talking about is specifically 24 grams of carbohydrates for an entire day. Now, I don't think that's healthy. But let me add this. I don't think it's healthy because I think we need fruits and vegetables. Animal products are basically animals that have eaten the fruits and the vegetables that we are supposed to directly eat. And while our nutrition system, our food production system really does need some help and needs a big upgrade because of all the things that have happened to it and the depletions that have happened over the years, I think that by getting foods as wholesomely made as possible, as wholesomely grown as possible, is a crucial key to having a healthy, well-balanced diet without having to think about it. You're turning your subconscious cravings on to help you eat said plant-based diet. Okay, you're shifting your primal instincts by doing this. And what paleo, keto, and Atkins believe is that by eating a low carbohydrate diet, you're doing the exact same thing that I believe. You're just getting it from animal products, and by getting it from the animal products, it's an easier absorption, digestion, and metabolization. Animal products can be very difficult for us to digest. Just as an example, red meat, I mentioned this a lot, red meat does not begin digestion, breaking apart, until it hits our intestines. That's why a lot of us feel like there's a rock in our stomach when we eat any red meat, because it kind of is until it moves along. All right, so that's where my whole making frenemies is going to come into play, because there are a number of people in this world who do believe that by eating especially red meats included, and having that be the largest component of your diet, that our bodies are better served. It's a different philosophy. And I do truly believe at the base and the core of everything that each of us is different. So maybe they're right. Maybe there's a balance between the two of us. I don't know. There hasn't been enough research to know for sure. Here's what I do know. I know that in well over 18 years in this field, following more of a plant-based diet with myself and in suggestions and guidance for my clients, I've helped many, many people, like we're talking in the thousands, you guys, improve their life and reduce inflammation. That's where these 7 anti-nutrients come into play. These are going to trigger inflammation. If you overeat them, you will end up fighting things like kidney stones, digestive upset. A lot of times, even though you think you're eating a well-balanced diet, if you're eating too much of the anti-nutrients and too much of one, so you don't have a lot of variety in your diet, you're eating the same thing over and over and over and over again, right? Even if you end up eating the same 5 foods, you got to eat more than 5 different foods, you guys. Like, you really do need a wide variety. If you're eating too much of those, you're contributing to a stress response. And as we've talked about recently, a chronic stress response leads you into autoimmune dysfunction, right? Overuse of your immune system, abusing it, making it work harder than it needs to, right? So it leads to autoimmune dysfunctions and illnesses and diseases. It also leads to chronic illness. Chronic stress leads to chronic illness because you are overworking your body. Overeating a small variety, so you're only, you're minimizing the variety of foods that you eat, increases the number of anti-nutrients you eat. So now let's talk about what these anti-nutrients actually are. Let's go through our 7. All right. I put gluten at the very, very tippy top because that's a big one in our world. That is a big one. So now, a lot of people already know gluten causes issues, right? Celiac, gluten intolerances, sensitivities. Just gluten in your body will be healthier. The reason that is a marketing thing is because of this anti-nutrient phase that we're in, all right? It's almost like someone decided that the anti-nutrients were the devil, and now everybody's coming after the devil. They're not really. For some of us, they are. Ultimately, with gluten, if you overdose on gluten, it causes inflammation, it causes digestive upset. Now, what do I mean by overdose with gluten? Because some of you are sitting here probably going, well, okay, but like I don't have gluten, then I have it, and I have issues. Yeah, that's going to happen. Anti-nutrients are just difficult for our body to digest, okay? And in some cases, having a little bit every single day helps your body figure out how to digest that ingredient. So in a lot of cases with these, and especially with gluten, if you're not eating a little bit of gluten every single day without a sensitivity and without an intolerance, when you do eat it, it's going to feel like you have a sensitivity. And there's a big difference. There's a big difference in the feeling that you get when you just simply can't digest it because you don't eat it very often versus you actually have a sensitivity and intolerance. The degree of pain, the degree of sensitivity, the response lasts longer. And it's a little bit more dramatic. So let's say you have a sensitivity to gluten, but you don't know about it. So you get rid of the gluten, for 3 weeks, and then you add it back in. Standard elimination, right? And now you have a response. How do you know if that response is because you have a sensitivity or an intolerance versus your body just isn't trained to digest it anymore? Number one reason, if you respond immediately to a sensitivity or as a sensitivity or an intolerance, you're going to blow it up. Okay? And if you're skinny mini, right, very thin, whether it is because of physical fitness or just DNA, both are possible, you will notice that it directly happens in your stomach. Okay? For some of us who have a little bit of curvature, right, you can notice that in your stomach and in your back. And it sounds funky to say your back, right? But it really does. It looks like it's pooching out of your back as well as your stomach. So a weird response. Your digestive upset is a little bit more serious in that it comes to you quicker. It's almost immediate. If it's something that your body is just not used to digesting, then it's going to take a little bit of time for your body to get it from the stomach into the intestines. So it'll be several hours later, possibly 24. Just kind of depends. Now, if you're having digestive upset that is that far in advance or that far after you've eaten gluten, that's when you know, okay, it's because I don't really eat it very often. And that's when you make a decision. Do I care about having it in my life or do I not? And if I do, I need to make sure I have a little bit, at least 5 times a week. You don't have to have it every day, but 4 to 5 times a week will help train your body to digest it, to understand how to digest it so that any of the blockages or failure to absorb or the triggers coming within the components, the gluten components that tell your body, hey, we don't know how to digest this. That kind of goes away. That it doesn't become a thing. Okay, so there's a fine line between eating a little bit and eating too much. For me, as long as I eat gluten 1 time a day, I'm okay. So, and 1 time a day for 5 days. I don't worry about it a couple of days a week. Like when the boys are home on the weekends, generally we'll eat just a vegan diet for Saturday and Sunday just because it's easier. It's just easier for me to throw things in, heat them up, and they have sensitivities to dairy as well. So it's just easier. Brian works on the weekends. He's in sales, so you know how that goes. Salesmen always work on the weekends. All right, so gluten is kind of a big one, right? Phytates. Walnuts, almonds, flax seeds, rice, wheat. Those are the 5 foods that you will commonly find phytate in that are most commonly eaten and triggering issues. You notice the second one was almonds, almond milk, almond cheese, almond yogurt, almonds, almond flour. If you're gluten-free, a lot of people had in the past relied on almonds. You can't just rely on one. You have to eat a variety. So the boys constantly eat or drink oat milk. Right? And I'll make it for them all the time. But like with their smoothies, I'll switch it up. Sometimes they get coconut milk. Sometimes they get almond milk. I have given them banana milk. If you haven't made it, oh, so good. It's something when you are dairy free and when you're gluten free that almonds are like the #1 recommendation. This is the cure. This is what you need. Make this with almonds. Make that with almonds. Make this with cashews. Make that with cashews. And it ends up where you're eating a lot of almond products or a lot of cashew products. I'm really happy to see more oat milk products in the non-dairy section because it opens up just a variety. People have used potato starch as well as pea protein to produce different cheeses. So the key with phytates is really just to make sure wide variety. Now with phytates are found in grains, seeds, legumes, and nuts. Okay, so variety. What does a phytate do? Phytate's going to reduce your ability to metabolize and absorb usable zinc, magnesium, iron, and calcium. All right, 4 key components. So if your iron is low, there are a few things you need to look at, and we'll talk about that when we're done. If your calcium is low, we'll talk about that when we're done as well, or when we're done with going through this. Lectin, we talked about, that's the reduced production of mucus. It also can inhibit absorption and metabolization of calcium, iron, and phosphate, or phosphorus, not phosphate, sorry, I'm thinking garden. I'm in the kitchen, so all the gardening stuff is outside. Beans, grains, seeds, nuts. All right, saponins. This is where we get a little bit specific. So saponins are found within soybeans, chickpeas, and quinoa. And you have heard me say, don't eat soy. Avoid the soy. This is not the reason. I say avoid soy in America because it has been overproduced and the amount of chemical damage that has been done to the all-natural soybean is significant. And trying to find an organic production of it, an organic growth of soybean without something in it that is processed or chemically dangerous to our body is so rare and so minimal that to me it's just simply not worth it. Additionally, in herbal medicine world, the soybean is used to manipulate estrogen. So for many women, adding soybean in, depending on our stage in life, can actually trigger more issues than help us with a well-balanced, healthy diet, right? Healthy lifestyle, healthy body. It causes more issues than it's worth, effectively. All right, so how do you know that there's a saponin over consumption? Gut inflammation. It's number one trigger, gut inflammation. We go back to bloating and cramping and constipation and diarrhea and just this off feeling. You feel a little bit nauseous, but not quite nauseous. You had that? All right, so then the next one, oxalate. Now, oxalate is one that is talked about a lot, just like lectin, okay? And it's funny saying lectin. What's going on, Drew Bug? We had a little incident at the park yesterday. Oh, he's at the gate. All right, we're gonna see where he goes with that. We might have a visitor. So anyway, so with oxalates, it's one of the most commonly talked about for this reason. Oxalates are found in green leafy vegetables. They're found in teas, beans, nuts, and beets, specifically beets, as well. But for the most part, green leafy vegetables is the culprit for a saponin overconsumption, right? Excess. What it does is it binds calcium, so it actually won't allow your body to absorb the calcium, if that makes sense. So effectively, when someone says binds calcium, okay, or binds iron, or binds something, here's what's happening. And we're going to kind of use an analogy here. We're going to use an analogy. So you have an egg, right? Did you ever do that, like dropping the egg trick in school? You had to put a protection around it, and when you dropped the egg, it landed softly, it didn't break. That's exactly what's happening here. Is when you have an abundance of saponins within your diet, what happens is your body decides that it's just going to protect the nutrients, protect the vitamins and the minerals inside said food that you actually need. So in this case, it's going to be the calcium. And that's why I was saying we're going to talk about calcium in a second. So for those of us that get older, our body only absorbs calcium and produces calcium, really, up to a certain age, right? Low 30s-ish. So then now you need to take supplements. When I was a kid, I had a calcium deficiency. So I've been on calcium supplements my whole life. I've paid attention to calcium my whole life. I know for a fact I don't have to drink dairy or eat dairy to get calcium. But, you know, when I could, it was really enjoyable. I'm not going to lie to you. It was much easier to get calcium that way. And ultimately, that's what animal products are. They are an easier way of getting a lot of the nutrients that we need because the animal has eaten it, and then now we're eating said animal. So then you get a dosage of it. All right, so now with green leafy vegetables, we're talking about, well, you want to have 3 cups every single day. How do you get a variety if you're supposed to eat 3 cups every single day? So you know how there was a kale fad and there was a spinach fad, and there was a very minor Swiss chard fad. It didn't last long, probably because Swiss chard is not very good. It's not very good raw. What ended up happening from those things is people eat all spinach or they eat all kale rather than eating a variety of leafy greens. So there's a plastic container in all the grocery stores I've been to. If it's not in yours, let me know, because I'd like to know that, make sure, because we have people from all over the country listening in. I believe we actually have one person from outside of the U.S. I'm not sure. I don't know if they're still with us. I've worked with people all over the world, so it's entirely possible. But there is actually containers, those plastic containers, that are a mix of super greens, or, you know, it's romaine and spinach, or it's baby spinach, baby this, and, you know, it's a mix. I like getting the mixes, especially when I'm making green vegetable juice. The boys are now drinking, their smoothies are now green smoothies, right? And I went from putting orange juice pineapple in to putting bought green juice with sweeteners in it. Now we're transitioning to from home. I tried the from home initially. It did not work, hence why we went through this little process. All right, so when I make the green juice for them, and it's going to be in one of our videos, so don't worry, I'll show you guys what I'm doing. But when I actually make this for them, it's going to be a variety. It's not going to be one. It's going to be a variety. Because if you just eat one, then your body goes into abundance. It goes into overdose. You're overworking your body on the same foods. Your brain gets bored. It feels like there isn't an abundance around it because you're only eating this food to get these nutrients. So that means you're going to be starving. That's not what it means. Consciously, we know that that's not what it means. But your subconscious, your primal instincts are like a computer. It only knows what it knows. If it feels an abundance of one type of food, one type of oxalate, it's going to trigger a response. All right? Now, when we're talking binding and limiting absorption, like what happens with oxalates, your symptoms aren't going to be reflective of, you know, bloating or digestive upset. A lot of the core components within dark leafy greens are your vitamin D, your B vitamins, vitamin K, things that help you with energy. So if you're eating a diet that is plant-based, that has a lot of leafy greens in it, but you're only eating 1 or 2 types of greens, and you feel like you don't have the energy that you should, perhaps you're drinking too much coffee to try and keep the energy up. When you're looking at your diet going, but I eat 80% plant-based, I have 3 cups of leafy greens. They are this and this. A lot of times it's spinach and kale. I mean, you go into the grocery store and those are the two biggest bags, right? Best price, so that's what you're going to buy, spinach and kale. And a lot of times that's what happens is you get your spinach and kale and you're eating all this food, but then you don't have energy. And you should have energy because you're eating all these vitamin Bs. Like you're getting a whole slew of them. You're getting your vitamin D. Like the energy should be flowing, right? You should be hyperactive because you're eating so much, but you're not. That's your signal that you're probably needing some variety. And, you know, as I'm saying this, I want to make sure you understand that each one of these things is just one tiny little piece of a bigger picture. And what I'm hoping that you're doing as you're listening is you're kind of looking at this and hearing things that apply to your life. Okay? As with anything, if what I say does not align with you and it doesn't resonate, doesn't align with anything in your life, it goes out the door. Don't put crap in your head that you don't need. All right, so we have two more that we're going to talk about. Glucosinates. I don't know if I said that right, but they basically reduce your body's access to the nutrients contained inside of it. What's it found in? Cruciferous foods. Now, cruciferous foods, like spinach and kale, and the dark leafy greens are part of our superfoods, right? So how can superfoods be bad for you? The glucosinates block specifically iodine, which can trigger dysfunction within the thyroid, right? Specifically, it actually can trigger hypothyroidism. I almost said hypoglycemia, completely different, completely different organ. Iodine's crucial to thyroid function, okay, to healthy thyroid function. It's one of the crucial nutrients. But if you have an abundance of the glucosinates, I'm going to have to Google that. That one's going to bug me. But if you have an abundance of that in your diet, then you're going to have hypothyroid issues. Does that mean that every hypothyroid issue is related to this? Nope. I can tell you for a fact. Because I eat cruciferous foods. I do. But I do not eat them on an everyday basis, and I definitely do not eat an abundance of them. I eat them, but like we're talking 4 or 5 times a week, single serving, no big deal. And yet here I was dealing with some hypothyroid issues. So mine were related to different culprits. It's a lot of the reason why myself and other people even have a job, because there are multiple areas thrown at us, and sometimes it's not the case. But if you are having issues with hypothyroidism and thyroid function in general, then it's something to look at. Okay, so what's a healthy consumption of cruciferous foods then? Because it's a superfood, so it feeds us healthy nutrients that we need, an abundance of them in a condensed form. So what's a healthy serving? Half a cup. And like anything else, if you consume it 4 to 5 times a week, you're good. Now, half a cup fresh. So you can, like, let's say you make cauliflower pizza. Well, that's a whole cauliflower. Half a cup's 1 or 2 slices. Okay? So it's the whole variety and moderation. You know, eating everything in a balanced way. You eat everything within balance, you don't have to think about all this stuff. Now, with cruciferous foods, some of the things that you're going to find is if you don't eat them, and then you do, gassiness, cramping, and like we're talking loud gas, we're talking painful gas. You'll notice bloating, but only because the gas buildup within your gut, it makes it very obvious, especially if when you sit down to eat said cruciferous food, you eat a large serving of it. I bring this up a lot. Big Bang Theory, Sheldon decides he's got to eat this cruciferous foods because it is the healthiest food on the planet, which it is. It is definitely up there. And you'll hear a lot of nutritionists and doctors say this. that cruciferous foods are the healthiest. Broccoli is supposed to be number one of all the cruciferous foods, right? Broccoli, broccolina, the green, darky green, dark, vibrant color, rich, tons of nutrients, goes hand in hand, right? But Sheldon decides he's going to eat all this broccoli, and he eats broccoli like, I mean, it's a huge bowl, right? And then it's the middle of the night. He thinks he's got appendicitis, and he wakes Leonard up, and they're going to go to the hospital because his stomach hurts, and it's like extremely painful, like double over in pain. It's in the same area as his appendix. Leonard says, well, have you had your appendix out? Sheldon says no. They barely make it through the hallway in their 2-bedroom apartment. Loud gas, stinky gas, because the sulfur content within cruciferous foods definitely has a sulfur smell if you over consume, right? And that's what happens to us when we eat too much at once and we don't normally eat these foods. All right, so now let's talk about tannins. So for us, a lot of times what affects those of us who are sensitive to tannins is the wine. A lot of people sensitive to tannins, they just give up to wine or they give up black tea. It's in black tea, not really in green tea or white tea, but within the black tea leaves. And it is in coffee. So espresso is basically the least volume of caffeine, right? Because what happens to the beans is you create espresso by effectively burning beans. That's what espresso is. So there is a higher volume of caffeine within light roast than there is in espresso. Everyone thinks the opposite because of colors, right? But light has more caffeine, dark has less. In the case of tannins, light has more tannins, dark has less. So if you want to drink coffee and you're noticing that you're having any issues with tannins, right? It could be a tannin buildup, or it's just all of a sudden your body has decided, yeah, you know what, we were cool with it before and we're not now. It happens. It's related to, basically how our adrenal system has been operating, things environmentally and internally that we're putting our bodies through. If this is the situation you're dealing with, have some espresso. See if you're still dealing with it, because it could be that you just need to switch the type of coffee. You could just need more of a dark roast than a lighter roast. I know the flavor is different, but if you're that set on drinking coffee, it's the lesser of the evils. And we talk about lesser of the evils a lot. With anti-nutrients, that's effectively what you're doing, is it's the lesser of the evils. Okay, so anti-nutrients are the compounds found in food that either hinder nutrient absorption, metabolization, digestion, or an overabundance triggers in a sort of inflammatory response, correct? All right. But I'm telling you, you can eat them. So variety and moderation is the key in anything nutritionally you do, regardless of whether you decide you are going to eat a plant-based diet, a keto diet, a paleo diet. You're going to go on your own and decide what your body wants. Screw everybody else, which actually I love advocating for, because I think listening to our bodies is the key. And while I think a plant-based diet works for the majority of us and for human beings, you may not feel that. You might eat that way and it's just not working for you, but then eating some other percentage-wise works better for you. Perfect. That's what you want to look at with the anti-nutrients. If you're starting to have issues with, and I mean starting, okay, if you're starting to have issues with bloating, with digestive upset, with joint pain, achiness, things like that, look at your diet. And when I say look at your diet, we're human beings. We lie to ourselves. We are freaking liars, every single one of us. Every one of us. We lie to ourselves day in and day out. So when I say look at your diet, I mean you need to write everything down, okay? You write down what you ate, you write down how much you ate, and you write down what symptoms you're dealing with. Stuffy nose, my eyes got blurry there for a second, I bent down to get something and I felt a twinge in my back. Those symptoms may not be related to what you're eating, but when you write all of that down for 3 to 5 days, right? You need at least 3 days. You don't necessarily need more than 5, but you need 3 to 5 days. And I usually tell people use your work days. School days, work days, whatever they are. The days that you don't throw everything to caution. No off days, okay? Look at those days. And then look at where you might be able to add some variety in. Maybe you've gotten stuck in a habit. We like to be comfortable. We like to be safe. And our brain thinks comfy is safe. At the same time, comfy means eating the same things over and over again because it's easy. It's the easiest thing to do. I'm going to eat these 5 meals for the rest of my life. I'm done. Is it boring? Yeah, but like, there's people in this world that actually will eat foods like that. I work with someone who, and man, she was resistant. She was so resistant to work with me. And I don't chase. I don't. If you and I are meant to work together, if I'm the person that is meant to share this journey with you, then it will be, right? I have programs out there that are specifically designed to help people who I connect with. I connect with people who do really well in hybrid programs. I connect with people who do really well in virtual programs that they go off and do their own thing and they come and talk to me when they're done, or in the middle if they have questions. That's why we have the things we have. That's the whole purpose behind the membership, behind the 6-week and behind the 6-month. It's to serve the people that I attract. And it took her a good, I think, 3 years to actually sit and talk to me and say, okay, something I'm doing is not working. Now she was really active. She was eating a very healthy diet, but she was eating the same exact thing. For 3 years, she ate the same exact thing. Breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, snack. She lost weight for the first 3 months. And after that, she busted butt for 3 years. Ate these foods all 3 years. Nothing happened. What did end up happening is she started reacting and she started having bloating issues. She started having achy joints. And the doctors were telling her the achy joints were a result of her working out. You guys, she was in her late 20s, had 0 medical issues. No, that was not a result of her working out. Her exercise habits were very healthy. They were monitored and she was coached by some really amazing trainers. And that wasn't the issue. She started eating variety, started mixing it up just 1 meal at a time, because when you eat like that for so long and you believe for so long that that is the way to go, it is difficult to switch your primal instincts. It is not easy. That's why the 6 month is 6 months. It takes a good 3 months of hard work and then 3 months of practice before you no longer feel the stress coming in of, oh my God, is this really going to work? Oh my God, am I really doing the right thing? That's why it's 6 months. You're really working for 3 and practicing for 3. And it takes that long for our mind, our body, and our spirit to get back into that triangle. Okay? An equal triangle. Equilateral? Is that what that's called? I don't know. Math is not my strongest suit. I did really well in science, but not in math. So when you're looking at all of this, and these anti-nutrients, can you see how they're not really the evil creatures a lot of people are trying to make them out to be? They can be. They can be pretty treacherous if you allow them to be. But like anything else, the trick is variety and moderation. So if you're experiencing any issues whatsoever, any symptoms, take your log. Look at what's happening after that 3 to 5 days. See if there are things within your diet that you can modify to make it healthier, make it more balanced, and make it resonate with what your body actually needs and the signals and the symptoms it's showing you. Now, if you're not sure about symptoms, you're welcome to DM me. I'm happy to answer questions and have conversations. There's also another video from a couple of weeks ago. There's a replay. We talked about symptoms and signals that your body sends and what they actually mean. Cravings, what poop and pee mean, how to look at them, those kind of things. So I'll link that in the description so that you guys have it. I think there's a way to put a like little card thingy up there with a link to the video, so I will try and do that. Now, is there anything else you can do with these, with the anti-nutrients? There is, if you are vegan and you eat a lot of beans, right? Which, I mean, it happens. There are actually 3 things you can do. And I made sure to write them down because for some reason I always miss the third one. And the third one's my favorite. And I will tell you why in a second. All right, so one of the ways that you can actually eat anti-nutrients as often as you want, or as often as your body will allow you to, especially if you are sensitive, if you're very sensitive to the various nutrients or the foods that we're talking about, but you're not sure about your response when you did the elimination and return, right? Reintroduction. Here's the way that you can really cement that process. And you can make these foods easier to digest, okay? Across the board. Because our bodies are still going to have a difficult time digesting these foods, but you just won't have as difficult a time digesting them if they're prepared in this way. So dark leafy greens, if you saute them for just a few minutes, especially spinach is a good one to watch. Saute it for literally 30 seconds. Vibrant green, juices start flowing. Boom. Onions releases the bulk of its components and its protective mechanisms when it's heated. Okay? Not really the same thing. But with dark leafy greens, and what I mean by that, let me go back for a second. What I mean by that is if you're sensitive to onions cooked, you're going to react more intensely. Okay? With spinach and with kale and the dark leafy greens, when you cook them for just a sec, it releases all of the healthy nutrients and removes a lot of the protections around the anti-nutrients. Okay? It basically tells the anti-nutrients we're releasing this into the wild and it is okay to now be consumed. It's not a case of survival versus death. It's not going to affect our growth. Because, I mean, really, anti-nutrients are in nature and in our world because survival instinct. Plants, they kind of, species like to survive. Hold on a sec. He got his, oh. Brothers. All right, so these 3 things that you can do. You can soak your grains and your nutrients. Yeah, Keegan took his toy. You can soak your grains and your beans, right? Yes, grains and beans. Ratio, 1 part grain and bean, 2 parts water. and you soak it. There's actually a soaking chart that I'll include below. I'll include the link below. For some things, it's only about 4 to 5 hours. For beans, your safest bet is just let them soak overnight. Quinoa, I believe it's only like a 5-10 minute soak. And really, in a lot of cases, you could just rinse it. Sprayer, rinse it. But, you know, a lot of cases, you can just rinse. Now, the reason I'm saying soak, there was a study done in Africa that actually proves that phytates are diminished by 57% when you soak grains. Grains specifically. The study only looked at grains and only looked at phytates. There are multiple studies in the world that show the same thing across the board, specifically with phytates, lectins, and oxalates. For some reason, those are the most prevalent in a lot of these studies. But with those, you know, and with the green leafy vegetables, you can soak them. What I typically do is I soak them for, 5-10 minutes, do like a lettuce spinner thingy, and then I put them in the fridge, and it crisps them up really well. A little bit of lemon, a little bit of vinegar really helps to kind of cleanse them from dirt and debris and crap all over them. You can sprout things. Eating the sprouts, you're basically catching the plants before it decides it has to protect itself. One scientist said, when you sprout foods, you're eating the plant when its guard is down. I'm not a fan of sprouts, so I have to do the soaking or the fermenting, which is the third. To soak or to sprout plants, rinse them, right? Get them wet, drain them so that they're just moist, leave them in a single layer, don't put them in the fridge, that stops growth, leave them on a single layer somewhere. And every day from that point forward, you want to do the same process at least 2 times a day, right? When they sprout, once you get sprouts, you put that into the fridge. And that's what starts the growth. But you only have about 2 to 3 days to eat those. So you can very easily sprout foods at home. You don't need to buy them. You can pretty much sprout anything. You can sprout broccoli. You can sprout almonds and walnuts and cashews and whatever, right? You can do it. If you have kids at home, it's a great experiment for them. Don't tell them what happens. Just ask if you can grow food from these nuts. We just bought these nuts at the store, but can you grow them? What about this piece of broccoli? Could you grow a piece of broccoli? All right. If you haven't seen, I have to link one of them below. You can actually grow produce from produce that you bought in the store. And that's the produce specifically that I'm talking about, the sprouts. Lettuce doesn't work like that. It doesn't sprout. But someone has his pants off and is walking with the pants around his feet. All right, so thankfully we're at the end because it looks like the toddler's about to terrorize. All right, so fermenting is the last. So with cruciferous foods, so fermented cruciferous foods. So you're talking about coleslaw and sauerkraut, pickles. I know cucumbers are not on this list anywhere. They're not typically an issue. Although I will tell you this, if you overconsume cucumbers, you actually will have some cramping. It's almost like it's too much. Well, it is too much. Let me correct myself. It is too much. Everything in moderation, everything in variety. That's the key. Now, what about potatoes? Have you heard of resistant starch and potatoes? That's kind of along the same lines of these anti-nutrients. So resistant starch it's in the same category, all right? Some people say it is an anti-nutrient. Some people say it's not. It just kind of depends on what study and what person you're listening to, what scientist you're listening to. With potatoes, the way that you reduce resistant starch, and resistant starch is effectively Our body is absorbing it and putting it into fat cells versus metabolizing it and consuming it, right? Digesting it, putting it into our body as a usable source of micronutrients. That's what resistant starch means. Now, to improve the absorption of the vital nutrients and the healthy nutrients within potatoes, you cook them, rinse them, put them in the fridge, and then 24 hours later, you bring them out, you reheat them. Rice is a similar process. You know, anything that has starch, if you're having issues with them or you're having issues with digestion and you're noticing that while you're eating a balanced diet, you're gaining a little bit of weight, that's a practice you can put into play for about 2 to 3 weeks. And that will give you a good idea of if you're dealing with just a malabsorption and, you know, a process of growing the food or producing the food or cooking and prepping said food is where your issues lie. Or if it's truly that food. A lot of times when we talked about this last week or the week before, we talked about this, where I think it was last week, your symptoms don't necessarily mean that you have to give up a food. It just simply means something needs to be adjusted. 9 times out of 10, I've found in my years that that's the case. It is not unheard of, but it is rare that someone will come to me and have to give up a significant amount of foods. I worked with someone early in my career who basically could eat 7 foods. And how do you include variety? What do you do? Well, she's now eating a lot more than 7 foods because she found out various things. Like certain foods need to be cooked so that anti-nutrients were removed. They were quieted, okay? She couldn't eat certain foods with certain foods. That happens too. And while it sounds like a lot, because she found this information out in a slow journey, a slower than quick miracle pill journey, okay? And I mean slower than 6 weeks. Because she found it out in a longer journey than that, it wasn't that difficult. That's the key. When you pull off a Band-Aid and you're trying to do too much at one time, it's too much. Everything in life, variety, moderation, is the key to life. We want the adrenaline spikes, of course, but for the most part, add the variety, eat things in moderation. If you're having issues, but you don't think it's a sensitivity, or you're trying to determine if it is, try the soaking, sprouting, and the fermenting, okay? And the process with the resistant starch. Try it. If you're able to eat those foods using one of those three processes, then the issue is not a sensitivity. It is directly related to an anti-nutrient abundance. Whether that means you're eating too much of it or your body just feels like it's too much and it can't metabolize or digest it. One of the two things will happen. And if that's the case, then we just adjust your primal instincts a little bit. Little shift. And you're fine. All right, you guys. That's everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for working with me, YouTube. All you guys watching on YouTube, wow, I figured out Facebook's little issue this morning. A little attitude adjustment. If you have any questions, as usual, you know how to reach me. Yep, that's our sign. That's our sign right there. All right, you guys, go be healthy. I will pop up all this information later today and get all the links and everything up for you, as well as get that replay fixed up as well. So I will chat with y'all later. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, guys.